But she's just like, I didn't even realize this thing's the most important.
So I said what's up for this. Yep. I am.
So you can live stream on that.
I'm live streaming on YouTube. Alhamdulillah. I got it. I got it.
Yeah, I wrote it down. All right. Same. That's it.
Maybe like one person.
Please send me. You have the links now, so you send me.
Check the link I sent to you. Whether that's whether that link will work or not. I sent you a link to update it the WhatsApp.
Now we're keeping the box here. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I don't have a copy of it.
On the AMC board mode.
There is a joke. I was reading the news. I think it's like now they're having second thought. Maybe this is a good business. Keep it. I just wanted to the cross side should be down. Thank you.
Is it showing up?
This is great. It's showing up.
It's
Yes,
showing?
it's offline.
No, I want to put it online. It's
Should
already
be online?
Should be online.
That's what it says. But what is that? That's live stream? Yeah, so far it's offline. Okay. Let me know when it's pushing. I thought Twitter blocked Periscope and then they killed it. I just don't know, but Twitter has their own live stream. Really? That's what Instagram has live stream. Facebook live stream. We're doing one row above, like right here.
I'll take the noise. Oh, funny. Okay. I will link it to the last link to send. If I am. Go ahead. Send it to another link. Yeah, what do I have to go on my own? It's a new link, very new link. The new link, the last link I sent.
Okay, there's another link.
Yeah. The other one went offline.
Officer, you should check this. Rent a minority.
Rent a minority.
Oh
What is
man, we will never be out of business now.
That's like this one.
They can lay me off. I'm not worried.
Hey,
So now,
you are live. You are live. Don't. You are live.
But it's delayed.
You are live.
It's delayed.
Yeah, it looks delayed, but don't say anything anymore.
This is not a real business that we can start. Why not? I've seen what like that one white family. Alami, could you go a little zoom in, or you would be doing that during the event?
Well, this is a beta test. Let's see how it's going to do.
This is the camera you
That's the camera. Right there. I need another high res.
That's what we do.
Working this
No, that is so bad.
Especially
Now what you get?
I'm not expecting you to go by. No, whatever.
Come on. That camera. I'm thinking, we need never can tell. Never can tell what's going to happen. Never should be proud.
Yeah. Veterans it has to be something them which show them equally. Yeah, veterans and something else.
You have the one that has an animal. What is that you? So now, were you able to get the interview?
They were doing something. I thought, open the door and they were like, yeah, they're doing it. Yeah, they're just. But it's supposed to be after.
What is it?
So the thing I'm with the fourth place and we got second ones people.
Come on. Max, take over for me. Not because. No. Yeah, easy.
Hey, how are you?
How you doing?
Good. I'm Slaughter. I'm with Swedish Television.
Swiss Sergeant?
Are you controlling speakers?
Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. I just want to put the lav and the wireless on the speaker itself so I can get everyone. Where do you have a loudspeaker?
Because we have ceiling speakers.
Oh, I see. They're all around.
They're all around.
Do you have an XLR output or something like that on your mixer?
No. Okay, let's come in.
You don't have this output.
Hi, sorry. I'm Karina. We're from Swedish TV. Hi, I'm Karina.
Please register yourself.
I was going to say hi to you. So I was going to say hi. I'm Karina from Swedish TV.
Oh, yes. Sure.
I just want to get story next week. Yeah, I need to start. Yeah.
So, where are they going to do?
We did it already.
We did it already.
We did it. Going that. They're going to have like a recitation.
Yeah. And it's all going to be out of place. I'll just put the mic up. I did the call already.
They did the what?
They did the call. That's what I thought.
Maybe I give it to somebody. This is a gift from us. Very interesting story. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just ask me. Because I think you know him better than I do, so you can let him know. Otherwise, I'll try to get his advice.
The letter says, it says, I have a picture.
Hey, brother.
Just send it, you know.
Yeah,
That's
okay. I had a couple of guys. Together as always, all right? So keep going, all right? Easy, easy. Keep doing great things. Me too, all right? See, all right, man. All right, let's see. Eric Gardner. All right, Eric. Scott? Good. Good to see you. How are you? Good, good, good. I need to run in here and do an interview with Dr. Jones. Go for it. It's going to be a bother to keep it. So that's what I'm looking for. It just started, but I'm saying
I remember yesterday. Yeah. I just said thank you.
Can I get one?
You will just drink this in the
Where are you?
Because the date
As long as
because I have already closed out. Month has already closed. So we want to keep everything.
Karina.
Yeah, what do you think?
Potential delays.
At least then we will. You gotta start.
Yeah, they said that there's a protest here.
Hi, I'm Karina from Swedish TV. Okay, I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you. We saw that you were coming. Would you have time to answer a few questions for us after this, or are you doing it? Okay, great. So you said that there were protests going on? Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask a quick question. Many of you who've been here before, I see some familiar faces. We always joke with you. Mr. Scott Cooper, why don't you please come join me here? We always joke that, we know you have many choices, and thank you for flying Southwest. You come here because there are certain principles we adhere to. One of those principles is we always start and end on time. I was just told that there is a protest going on, and apparently there's some traffic. What do you recommend? Should we wait or should we start? I'm just going to work with all of you because this is not a decision I can make myself. You are our guests. So those of you who say, wait 10 minutes, raise your hand. My God, you're too nice. All right, we wait 10 minutes. That means we will land 10 minutes later. You okay with that? Wonderful, you're too nice. So I think that we should just turn it off and keep it light and fun.
We even have a baby.
You can wait. You don't have to.
The Swedish time is doing afterwards.
It would just be 5 minutes, but it is
All right,
totally up to you.
let's roll.
One more quick thing, and I will probably make this announcement again. You can see we are not in the best of the situation with our renovations today, so that ladies' restroom is upstairs. I apologize for that, but that means you have to go outside, make a left in that staircase going up. If someone's out there, if you've been here before, I'm going to request one of our ladies to come down so they can usher you up. Ladies' restrooms are upstairs, men's restrooms are over there. If you have any other questions or needs, Zafra, can you raise your hand, please? That gentleman over there will guide you. Just want to make sure you know.
So let's just set up no, it's
It's WBL, though.
Yeah, what's up with smart? Like, don't worry about it. Whatever happens.
He's like life. Do you have you know the program, you know what's going to happen first and what's coming?
You have the agenda. The person have the agenda. Wait is so?
Mansoor knows?
Yeah, Mansoor.
Oh.
He's doing interview in the
Oh, he's doing an interview.
I don't think the program. Well, user. Something on the side. I'm gonna look like something.
Okay, so you started first presentation.
Yeah.
And it's all
Yeah, okay.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to know what the beginning was because that's
But now it's going to
yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
to change it to slideshow now.
Right, sure?
Yeah. The slideshow is not working.
I'll get you to go.
Can we slow it down?
Okay, slow it down.
Yeah, now it's too fast.
I think that's all time. Do like 5 seconds.
5, 6, whatever you like.
Oh my God. No. That's why. That's what flashback.
We'll start in a minute or two. If you're standing in the back, if you're looking for a seat, we still have some front row seats available. And you make yourself comfortable. You can still talk, you don't have to be that serious. I feel like I ruined it for everyone. No, we're really thankful for all of you to come today. It means a lot. Really means a lot to us. One thing we always say, so please don't drive that car back home with a question in your mind. If you came here with a question, you must make sure that that question gets asked, it gets answered, or at least gets validated and addressed. So we're starting at 3:15, and that means we will try to land at 4:45 to keep our flight to 90-minute duration. May I request Hafiz Abdul Qudus Sahab to come and start the program with recitation of Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقذ ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب.
Thank you very much. And now for the translation of these verses, I request Zafir Ahmed, please.
In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful. Have we not opened for thee thy bosom, and removed from thee thy burden, which had well nigh broken thy back, and we exalted thy name? Surely there is ease after hardship. Surely there is ease after hardship. So when thou art free strive hard, and to thy Lord do thou attend wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Our very dear and respected guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of God be upon you. A guest came to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 1400 years ago. And the Prophet did not have any food that day. It's customary, it's well known that days would go by and he would just have barely one meal. So he had to entertain this guest. He asked people around who were sitting in his company. He said, is there anyone who can take this guest home and Allah will be pleased with you? Abu Talha, one of the men who didn't know that whether he had the means to entertain the guests or not, but he took him home. And as he got to home, he asked his wife, is there something for the guests? And the wife said, I have barely little food for the children. I don't have enough food. The man says, why don't you lull the children to sleep without food tonight? And we'll figure out the rest. So this woman goes and lulls them to sleep, and afterward the man says, why don't we now set up the table, and as the guests arrive on the table, I want you to extinguish the lamp. And then both of us will just be lip smacking to try to give an impression as if we're eating along and let the guests eat. They did that, and next morning the guests were happy, they went away, and the Prophet, God informed the Prophet, and he told Abu Talha in the morning, he said, God was pleased with what you did last night. You don't come to us in the best of the times. When you walk in today, we don't have a restroom for ladies downstairs, there's a restroom for men. The building is undergoing renovation. We are just 1% of the country. I don't think we can fulfill any of your needs. We feel like Abu Talha. We feel like that person who can do very little for you. You really don't need anything from us. You come here as ambassadors to give us something, but still you are our guests. So I just want to make sure that today and in the future, for us, wherever we are, whatever we're capable of, your needs will come before our needs. There's a reason many of us parked in off-site parking today because we were worried that if the parking gets filled up, you don't need food. We don't think that we'll run out of food today. That's not the risk. We could mitigate that. But we will make sure that you have better parking spots. When we have a question-answer session, we'll make sure that our guests get the time. You're here for a conversation. You're not here for food. We want to make sure you get to control the mic and you get to have that conversation. And we'll make sure that this relationship that we're about to start today only gets stronger. And I humbly requested earlier, please don't go home with a question in your mind. And now I'm going to request our first speaker. Let me read his notice. This is Mansoor Shams, the U.S. Marine veteran, our local youth president in Ahmadiyya Muslim community here. We are honored to have him speak to us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and blessings of God be upon all of you. He was preparing a munitions cache for demolition in Balad, Iraq, when it exploded. He was a University Berkeley graduate, was close to finishing his PhD, but decided in the midst of it, let me do a good deed. He joined the U.S. Special Forces. He died. He was Staff Sergeant Ayman Taha, U.S. Army, a Muslim. He was in Bakuba, Iraq, along with 4 others clearing a home until there was a blast. He died. He was Corporal Khan, US Army, also a Muslim. He died among 3 other soldiers in Gardasara, Afghanistan, when an explosive device blew up near their vehicle, overturning it. He had just been married only for 3 months. He was Captain Naqvi, US Army. I'll let you guess his fate. Let that go to the imagination. He was 29 when his hospital helicopter crashed in Qusar, Iraq. He died along with 11 others. A father of 1, a United States Marine, Staff Sergeant Kendall Damon. He died from injuries by an explosive device in Baghdad, Iraq. He and his wife had a baby girl. He was Major Ahern, US Army, also a Muslim. And the list goes on and on and on. And if I sort of get a little bit emotional or aroused up, the state of our nation doesn't really help much. These were human beings just like you and I, with visions, dreams, aspirations. But they're not here. You and I are. They're not here. They gave this, what we call the ultimate sacrifice. That's what they did for the nation that they loved, that they so cared about. And sometimes it makes me wonder that with the state of our country, was it all in vain? I wonder what they would say if they were alive. You see, for those who are not veterans, or perhaps it actually even applies to veterans, I say this because there are many who serve in various capacities, even till this day. So when he or she signs on that dotted line, that's when your sacrifice begins. It doesn't matter if you got sent to war, if there was injuries or no injuries. It doesn't matter. It simply matters that you signed on that dotted line, and that's when your sacrifice began. What a sacrifice it is for the country that you love. To be clear, I'm not here seeking anyone's sympathy. I'm not here wanting anyone to feel for me or the members of this congregation or the Muslim world at large. That's not what I want. I'm here to raise awareness of that moral compass that's deep within us all. Perhaps the only thing that I really want you to do is take a moment to reflect and ponder deep within. How am I helping the conversation? What am I doing to positively contribute to our society? What mark will I leave behind? How will I be remembered? This is a question that only you yourself can answer. You don't need me to answer, nor do you owe me an answer. This is something that you have to look deep within yourself and figure out. You see, I want people to know the reason I don't desire the sympathy of anyone or why anyone sitting here in this crowd, regardless of ethnic background or religious affiliation, because we're a nation founded by and immigrants. That's the truth. So it doesn't really matter if you're black or white, brown, Muslim, Christian, Jewish. It really, really doesn't matter. Because at some point, whether it was first generation, second generation, whatever generation, you are an immigrant. Now, there's obviously an exception where we have the Native Americans. And I would say, I don't think I see any in here, but if there are some there, there's an exception there. So my message, so I just want to, I want to remember, not only do I speak as a Muslim today, but as a proud American Muslim United States Marine veteran, who without any reservation, not only because my faith taught me to serve my country and be loyal to my country, out of an inclination of how natural it was. I would even go as far as saying that my faith perhaps didn't even need to teach me that. That's how natural it was for me. And when we see these things happening today on today's streets, the conversations that are taking place, obviously it's somewhat disturbing. So my message to anyone who looks a little different, maybe looks a little like me, maybe the children that are sitting here, your inferior complex is your inferior complex. That's all it is. And if there's anyone sitting here who feels otherwise, then maybe it's time to open up a book and take a history lesson. Having said that, it's really also important to have these real conversations because these get-togethers aren't just as fun without real conversations, right? Somebody just gives up a speech, says a few things, makes it all nice. That's not really having a real conversation. So I want to go deeper, a little bit deeper into what's going on in my mind, perhaps what's going on in other people's mind. What are the issues that are really, really bothering us? So I'm going to try to be a little bit direct, a little bit blunt. For example, sometimes we tend to bomb nations across the world. Sometimes we don't want to have that conversation, but we must. Would we accuse a nation like Iraq of weapons of mass destruction? Destroy hundreds of thousands of lives, literally, either murdered or displaced. And we say, oops, we made a mistake. Sorry, bad intelligence. Leaving rubble where there was once a house, a home of a family, just like you and I have. Of a school that was standing with these children like this, like these. That's what we do. Memories for someone to reminisce over who lost their brother, sister, mother, father, spouse. It's painful. And we just sort of walk it off like nothing happened. Because you know what? It doesn't affect us, our daily lives. But it affects a lot of people's lives. Their tears. How unjust, I would say. Just because we're the most powerful nation in the world. How unjust. And all the while our hearts do bleed. And some people will say, this is a loyalty to the Muslim world. It's not loyalty to Muslim. Yeah, they're Muslim nations. I feel for my fellow people, I guess, who follow the same faith. But where's the humanity? It's the humanity inside of me that cries, that hurts. When you see videos of people in Syria, doesn't anybody hurt? Little kids. Blood coming out of his guys, little kid laying on the side of the beach, dead. Little kid, a few years old. These are real conversations. That's what it's all about. That's why we're all here. You see, my loyalty should never be questioned because I'm saying these things, because these are real conversations. In fact, this is exactly what is American. This is what America is all about. The moment we stop having these conversations or try to control them, then it's not very American of us. I mean, imagine if today your loyalty was based off of who you voted for. Imagine that. Probably half of us would be in pretty bad shape. You see, over the course of last week, some of you may have heard, some of you perhaps not. I had this wonderful opportunity as part of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community Youth Association. They're running this nationwide campaign, Meet a Muslim. So I went around with my own little twist, which I added, ask me anything. I'm a Muslim and a US Marine, ask me anything. And I traveled this last week to Houston, Denver, Portland, and Seattle. I just got back last night, or like yesterday evening, after a cross-country flight. So I'm a little wore out. But boy, was it awesome. Boy, was it awesome. I had done the Periscopes, the Twitters, the Facebooks, but this was a totally different experience. This is meeting, you're like amongst the people. You're meeting real human beings. As I walk around, it was a little bit tough, to be very honest. I mean, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world to like pretty much put yourself out there. It took a little bit of courage, I'm not gonna lie, but it was all worth it. Awesome experience. I remember one particular example that really sort of stood out, and I think it's worth sharing it. I'm standing in Houston with my sign, Target. I'm a Muslim and a US Marine, ask anything. So this guy walks by me, and he gives me the stare down. Like literally, like the whole time he goes from 30 feet, and he's walking by and like looking back the whole time just like that. Just like the worst look, the evil look, I would say. So one of the guys that was there, I said, hey, he kind of smiled back. I'm a smiler, as you can see. Kind of laughed it off. So one of my friends said, like, what did he say? I said, the guy gave me the evil look. So this guy turns around, literally turns around, and he comes back almost like charging. And he's like, what did you say? It's almost screaming. I said, you gave me the evil look, man. That's what I said. All of a sudden, there's a 360 change. His wife that was walking with him. This guy was a nurse practitioner, by the way. His wife was a director of some hospital in Tennessee. Just trying to put the education part out there. It's not just some random, this guy's an intelligent guy, you can tell. There for some conference. Comes back, shakes my hand. He said, you know, I didn't read the whole sign. I just read the first part. It's okay, I let him do this. I'm not going to interrupt him, you know. We continue to have the conversation, talk a little bit more. Long story short, he says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a pawn. I'm sorry for my ignorance. Will you help me? Destiny brought me to you today. I'm going to quote his text because I have it here. Just to read it to you. I literally exchanged numbers with him. I said, you know what? This conversation can't end here. Because then it would just be one other guy. Take my phone number. It was a pleasure, it was a true pleasure to have met you. Between us, we can bridge the gaps of ignorance and misunderstanding conveyed to us by those with a manipulative agenda, of which I disdain, that have separated our peoples. You extended the olive branch, which I dismissed of my own ignorance, but your perseverance and humanity reversed my misconception. Of course, if it weren't for my girl, his wife, our connection would have not occurred. I am grateful for your message and willingness to be where you were, when you were, because I believe it was destiny. So I'm motivated, more motivated than ever before. You know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't realize what my mission was, joining the Marine Corps. But today, I realize my purpose is even more. The dots are connecting. So it's going to be really up to us. Do we want to enjoy the day-to-day comforts of our lives? Do we want to be on the sidelines watching everything that's taking place? Or are we going to help each other for everything good? We can be the shoulder for each other to lean on. We definitely can. All it requires is a knock on your neighbor's door. See a neighbor here? He's from Israel, by the way, Jewish. Good friends. That we, as part of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we're not going to go around saying, not my president, because that's not the way we operate. I know you'd be surprised, because our teachings are actually sort of the opposite. So if you want to live a life of Islam or a Muslim, then you have to either walk the walk or not walk the walk. We choose to walk the walk. It teaches us that we must obey the people and authority above us, to not create disorder on the earth. In fact, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the 5th Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, addressed this question head on prior to the election. We are peaceful, law-abiding Muslims. And so we're not going to take to the streets or protest this election in any way. We will wait to see what Trump's policies are, what they actually are, and what he actively seeks to try to implement. If there are good policies, we will support them. If there are any policies which seem to discriminate against any group, keyword any group, whether it be Muslim or not, we will work within the lawful procedures to register the complaint. That's what the ACLU did yesterday, if you guys are following the news. So if you're confused about the Muslim stance, that's it. That's how we feel about what's going on. And just before I close, I asked some Muslim veterans to join us. I would like, if they're here, I don't know if they made it or not. I heard there's a lot of protests, road blockages, I don't know what's going on. But please, take a moment. I just want to, they're facing the brunt of the storm today. And I want them to stand up because I want you to see they're right amongst us. So veterans, active duty, please, Muslims, stand up, kindly. Thank you for your service, guys. I know it's rough out there. You know, what makes it extra honorable is that even outside the rhetoric, they continue to serve this nation. Anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sometimes you meet a person and you can tell that you just feel like you've met a long lost friend. God is my witness, Scott. That's exactly how I felt when I shook your hand today. So I'm introducing and inviting Mr. Scott Cooper, Director of National Security Outreach Human Rights First, founder of Veterans for American Ideals, retired Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Marine Corps, and my very good friend. Scott, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I haven't had an opportunity to say that very often since I was in the Middle East, and I thought that was the coolest thing. I remember my first tour of many in the Middle East, and such expressions as, you know, alhamdulillah, bukra inshallah. It seemed to be a common one when we were negotiating things with our friends, and so I'm just enormously honored to be here today. And thank you all for coming. I'd like to focus a little bit outside the headlines in CNN and what seems to have dominated certainly the national as well as individual conversations these last couple of days. We picked a fortuitous time to have this event, certainly. I should begin by thanking Mansour as well. I stalked him for a while because I just was so impressed by what he was doing, and had found his website, Muslim Marine, and so he's become a dear friend over the course of these last months. And he's the reason that we got to come together like this. But the issue I want to talk about is community. The idea of community is something that should be a byword in the coming days and weeks and months. So, my own story, I grew up in a small town in Wyoming. Most people I meet say you're the first person I've ever met from Wyoming, and that's true because not only is Wyoming less than 1%, we're like less than 1/2 of 1% of the country, the smallest state by population. And as I think back to the Wyoming of my youth, of course it's easy to romanticize it, but I grew up in a very tight-knit community. We had each other's backs. It also meant that I didn't get in a whole lot of trouble because everyone was watching me, and I knew that they'd tell my mother if I screwed things up. And that's what stayed with me, is that, if an individual suffered a tragedy, the community came out to support them. In fact, let me go off on this for just a minute. I've got a friend, Kelly Valdez, that we both ended up here, that grew up in Wyoming, and that sense of community sees her today. I haven't seen her for 20 years. But that's the kind of community that we're building today. And so, as you think about that, that's what we're doing here today. Not railing at any single one individual or another party or the like. I could not wait to get out of Wyoming in growing up because I wanted to do something with my life and get the heck out of that place. But also, like any young person, I was searching for a purpose, and I was drawn to the military. Not by an interest in violence, but like I think all those I came to know during my time in the Marine Corps, I longed for the maturity and respect that came with it. I wanted to prove my worth, but also serve something bigger than myself. That's the kind of people who end up in the military. In the front row, fellow veterans I see around the audience. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? People of faith, people who join the Peace Corps, people who volunteer and choose to become teachers, they have this faith in an idea that is America. And the military seems like an oftentimes easy place and logical place for us to stand up. The idea of America meant to be part of some shared purpose. And again, I think that's what we see here today. And of course, in the military, you're taught to flatter yourself that you're somehow a very important part of that. And you do. So, why did we start this Veterans for American Ideals project, and how is it that we came together like this? I would submit to you that all of us here today, community, to not just come together, but to what I would say means sacrificing for your community. I joked with my peers, even though I did several tours in the Middle East, I never did anything brave in my entire life. Unlike so many that sacrificed so much on those deployments. I was, in fact, oftentimes a staff officer, and then also I flew. So I look at the infantrymen with a great deal of respect. When you take off the uniform, perhaps that's when you're most challenged to do something courageous. Certainly, I think that's what we're called on today to do, as we see some divisiveness, some things that give me pause. And so as I was talking to Mansoor about this, I said, hey, let's do something. Let's find a way to come together. And that's what this event today is. This Veterans for American Ideals project is a theory that a lot of us have that that veterans could be a civilizing, unifying force in our country today. As we've talked about it, we're in the thank you for your service moment in American history. 45 years ago, the veteran was not universally admired as we are today. And suddenly I look at this moment and I'm suddenly braver, stronger, better looking, and kinder than I actually am in most people's eyes. How then are you going to use that extra influence and admiration that you have? Do it for more than getting 10% off at Home Depot with those. And that's been the line that we've had to those that we're trying to recruit among us. Because, for instance, in this moment, there are things that are unpatriotic, like speaking with contempt of another group. And who better than a veteran to speak up in a moment of courage and say, no, that's a clown move. No, that's not who we are. And so that's a lot of what we're doing here. It's more than just an event like today, though. It's showing our fellow citizens that this experiment that we have of our country, we must always strive to protect, preserve, and continue to build a cohesive society that's worth fighting for. And if you want a society to work, then you don't keep underscoring the places that you're different, but you emphasize your shared humanity. That's what we're here doing today. I think about Rahim that I just met, Nasir that I cannot find because we were talking before, but Nasir was telling me about how his son had just finished a PhD in Germany and is going to do postdoctoral. And I thought, how fantastic is that? And that's the America I know. Oh yes, by the way, Nasir is from Pakistan, who came here, happens to be Muslim, and is, I would submit, just as patriotic and contributing to his country as any one of us here. So it's why I'm heartened by the event today. And I'd like to tip my hat to you, but leave you with one last thought, and that's that the work doesn't end today. Serving simply means sacrificing for your community, be it your neighborhood, be it your city, be it your workplace, or in fact your entire country, as so many veterans have. Belonging to a society requires sacrifice. And it's hard by definition, but it is far worth the cost. I look forward to the conversation. I'm indebted to you, Dr. Yunus. Thank you. And I look forward to more of the conversation.
Thank you so much for your beautiful comments, Scott. Now I invite Sarah Feinberg, Senior Financial Analyst with Washington Post, U.S. Marine veteran. And Sarah, please, this is your family. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. I think there's a lot to be concerned about this week and post-election. There's a lot to be angry about. as Muslims, Jews, women have been discriminated against, and there's been a lot of rhetoric against these groups throughout the last 18 months. But being in this room today gives me a lot of hope. There are very few places on earth where I, as a Christian woman with a Jewish last name, could come with a lot of Marine veterans, my fellow Marine veterans, come to a Muslim community and talk about the need to reduce bigotry towards Muslims. So where in the world could that be possible other than here in America? And that's what makes us great, and that's what makes us that diversity and that ability to have this exchange of ideas. What excites me about the future of this country, and we need to work together to preserve that. So I want to start out by just saying that there's a lot of focus on the politics of what's going on and the politics of bigotry, but this is not a political issue. This is a fundamental question for us as humans on how we talk about and treat other human beings. It's a question for us as individuals, and as families, and as communities, and how we speak out against bigotry, and how we choose to treat other people, how we choose to teach our children to treat others. And as a mother of 3 children, it's even more important for us to surround ourselves with people who are examples of respect towards other groups, respect towards people of other faiths. And I think the children often set a much better example than we do. So we need to be setting an example for them. And we also need to be watching them interact and trying to imitate that innocence. I think for those of us who do want to stand up to what's going on, the solution to this bigotry is not just political. It's on us as individuals to address. And one of the best ways to do that is by talking to our tribe or the people who are in our area of influence. Right after the election, the Sunday after, my pastor got up, my Christian pastor got up and said, no matter how you voted, no matter who you supported, why you supported them, let's understand that our tribe, Christians, promoted bigotry and sexism and racism into the mainstream. And it's incumbent on us. It is our responsibility to now stand up for what's right and to make sure that we continue to be a house of worship that welcomes refugees, that welcomes people of other faiths, that welcomes women. I do, as much as you see in the media that evangelicals have not stood up for the right things, there are a lot of Christians out there who are. Our church has been welcoming to refugees. My husband and I decided a year ago, when the rhetoric towards refugees and Muslims was really heating up, we decided to take our house off the market and move the refugee family in it. We are now hosting a family from Afghanistan. They have 3 children. I have 3 children. They play together. They go to school together. They get along. They didn't speak English when they came. Now, the oldest daughter, Arfa, is 10 years old. She's reading to my twin boys who are 18 months old. And that interaction is what makes us a great nation and makes us a great community, and we need to preserve that. But it really comes down to humanizing the other and setting the example of empathy for our tribe, and not, rather than just lobbing bombs at the other side, we need to set the example and try to use our sphere of influence. And lastly, another thing to give you hope, especially Muslims who are feeling the heat of bigotry and feel like they're being targeted, and feel like the whole country hates them. This event is so important because it is veterans coming together. Veterans signed up to serve their country. We all swore an oath to the Constitution that we would uphold and defend it against enemies, foreign and domestic. And right now, those of us who put our lives on the line to go overseas and defend those American ideals, we realize that it is now our responsibility to defend those ideas here at home, more importantly. And so we will stand with you. We will continue to support the Constitution and stand with the oppressed. And we're going to win this fight. This is not something that Marines walk away from, and I can tell you right now that we are in it. We are standing up. We're speaking out. And we're using our platform to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is where the fun begins. This is by design that we don't allocate just 5 minutes for QA after a 55-minute talk. This is not an accident. And we believe the real fun is in interaction. So just to set some ground rules, as I said in the beginning, you didn't come here for food. You came here for a conversation. You came here with a question, with a comment, with a concern. This is your opportunity. As you are our guests, I would humbly request local, our own members, this is the time, let's just give first priority to our guests. I did talk after our prayers to our children, some of them are sitting there, and some of them had an interesting question, so we have time, I may give an opportunity to the children. When you ask a question, please don't worry about hurting our feelings. We're big boys. We can handle it, no worries. If you have a question in your mind, just say it out loud. Whoever, panel, I'll make sure that they get to answer your questions. Many of your familiar faces, you know the ground rules well. It's the first question that scores the most points. So please don't give us a long pause there, because we will force you to talk if you are not going to talk. And the last thing is we have to land at 4:45. My experience is the most provocative question, the person who fills out the most provocative question, waits till the end. Please don't do that, because at that time we are in the landing mode. I may have to cut you short. If you go early, you get all the time and we have all the fun. So this is where the first long pause comes until the guest asks the question. Yes, please.
Well, just for Scott, use some information about the organization.
Sure.
Because I'm a veteran, so.
Of course. So Veterans for American Ideals is a project of Human Rights First, which is where I work. Human Rights First is a nonprofit that spends a lot of time, there's a lot of lawyers there, so it's really annoying sometimes. But they do pro bono work. You're a lawyer too? Oh, great. Oh boy. As you said, no one's offended here. But they spend a lot of time providing pro bono assistance to refugees and asylum seekers. So there's also an advocacy arm. And so when they hired me on after I retired from the Marine Corps, our CEO asked me if perhaps veterans would want to be involved in some of our work, in some of our advocacy work. They had a long-standing relationship that she had nurtured with several retired generals and admirals on some other issues in the national security world, torture specifically. I'm probably revealing too much, but she noted that retired generals and admirals are quite a geriatric crowd. And would younger veterans want to engage on this? And of course, pushing back against, well, bigotry, in advocating for refugees, that's, it made too much sense. And so I said, hey, we could do this. Let's brand it as Veterans for American Ideals, because Human Rights First very much is about trying to help America live up to her ideals. And so that's where the project came from, was just a couple of us veterans saying, hey, this is something where we could use the platform of our voices to advocate for others. And that's where it came from. So yes, sign on, we'd love to get you involved.
There's another question to that. Yes, please.
Yes, hi. The people who are here today, obviously, it's, quote, preaching to the converted, in one sense or another. We all believe in universal harmony and all that good stuff. How would any of you recommend that we increase the outreach and interaction between communities? The Meet a Muslim program sounds wonderful. I've been in contact with some relatives, one of whom is very, very right-wing, and he really went on a rant on Facebook against me the other day. How could we increase this kind of outreach?
Right. I think what I didn't get to when I was talking earlier was about what the best way to do that, I think, is to humanize the other, and these debates that we have over the idea of refugees just isn't productive. It's not productive until people meet a refugee, because a lot of the bigotry is born out of fear, and fear comes from ignorance, and the ignorance can be alleviated by us just by introducing and humanizing the ignorant, I guess, to new ideas, to new people, and one of the things that really concerned me last year was that my community of Christians was became so anti-refugee overnight. And so when my husband and I welcomed this family into our home, it completely changed the conversation, because they couldn't say those refugees are scary. They were meeting them. They were watching my children play with them. And if my 5-year-old son can sit down and play with a refugee, then it looks pretty foolish for an adult to be scared of them. And I think that's what we need to continue doing, is to be reaching out to the other side, but really facilitating these types of conversations so that we can talk directly to their face rather than about them. Does that answer your question, or that wasn't practical enough? Probably. So
I've got another one, if I can speak to it. I spent about 15 years in eastern North Carolina at Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point in the Marine Corps. And one of my close friends was the youth pastor of my church, Lance Sellett, who just had an outfit with Mansour. But one of the active organizations there was RCS, Religious Community Services, that ran a small soup kitchen in New Bern and the like. I'd say get out there and do something. And the reason I bring this up is I asked Lance, hey, is there a way that maybe you could encourage RCS to get involved in supporting refugees? Because there are some refugee families, around that community, and he started checking into it. A couple of weeks ago on Martin Luther King Day, several of us veterans partnered with Islamic Relief USA in a day of service. And they have a great program in Washington, D.C., where once a month they set up a food distribution point where they get some food and distribute it to one of the needier communities in Anacostia there in Washington. And so I'm there with Muslims trying to make an example, passing out food to people. As there's tomatoes and fruit and kale. I don't know why they got kale. Kale's terrible. But literally, it was something simple, and it was several dozen people not asking what faith that person was, what their background was. It was, do you need a tomato? Don't take the kale. And literally, I would encourage you to find opportunities like that. Find one of the refugee resettlement agencies. They're always looking for help. Find an organization like No One Left Behind, for instance, that is a veteran-led organization that's helping the families of former interpreters and translators and serve with us overseas. So that's one thing I would say as well.
I'm just going to add my 2 cents to that. I think sometimes people get a little bit overwhelmed and they start thinking, okay, how am I practically going to get in touch with this organization or that organization? But we all have our circle of friends. We all have the people that we're around all the time. And what I learned from this campaign that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is running, it was amazing. Literally, as I mentioned, it did take a level of courage. When I went to Denver, there's a different type of crowd. You have to kind of engage them, kind of go up to them. Portland, everybody was just come give me high fives. And I had a 9-year-old girl. She said, "You're that guy I heard on the radio." Wow, she's all excited. So I was like, "You listen to NPR? You're 9 years old." Pretty taken aback by that, So we took a picture together, and her father actually sent me a note, afterwards, thank you for talking to her and stuff like that. And I literally got 100+ emails. I'm still trying to respond. I feel like it's almost a duty. If someone took the time to write to me, that I have to write back to them. My point is that I think the conversations actually within your friend, you can actually engage those conversations. You can actually start those conversations. What do you think about Muslims? And that's pretty crazy. But believe it or not, you're going to have all sorts of responses. And right there, when you say that you were at a mosque, and that's not how all Muslims are, or you met a Muslim Marine. Well, really? That exists? Believe it or not, I noticed that it does have a huge impact. So start with your circles. Talk with your friends, your family, engage the conversation. Because they'll go talk to someone else.
Question right here.
It's just something that I want to contribute to what we just discussed. And during the Eid al-Adha, what I did, I invited about 40 families within my neighborhood. I said, come and celebrate Eid with your fellow Muslim, with your neighbor who is a Muslim. And we're able to get a sizable people to come around. And then what I actually brought within my circle, my neighbor, just next neighbor, he came there for 4 years and they don't even know who that guy is. But through that event, come and celebrate Eid with your neighbor. They were able to know each other. Nobody around them knew who this guy was. How many years? 4 years, and they never saw him. But through that event, we're able to sit down for about 3 hours, talking and eating. Then we got to know each other, and I say, well, this is your neighbor, I'm a Muslim. I have somebody to talk to them. If you have any problem, you have any question, if I can answer it, I will direct you to the right place so that you can get the right answer. Okay, thank you.
This is the question meant at the end, okay?
Wonderful. Making progress.
Could you please speak to the issue of women Muslims? I know I listened to a talk years ago at Johns Hopkins of a Marine who was a United States Muslim Marine woman. And so with all respect for women within society, you know, could you speak to the women within the Muslim community and equality, and because I think that there are misperceptions out there about that
Love your
issue.
question. I absolutely love your question. I think the fairness and justice demands that a woman should answer that question rather than a guy with a beard. So again, I'm going to put our sisters on the spot. If there is a microphone upstairs, one of our sisters would like to answer that question, I think we'll deeply appreciate it. I know it's unscripted. I know you were not planning for this, but if someone has a microphone, if Sada Saiba is there or whoever you would want, the question was, what about the women's rights and women equality? God help me. Well, Usam, great. We can hear you speak louder and go right ahead.
I think the problem, the idea of a woman Muslim Marine is a good idea, but the problem with being a Muslim Marine is that in the Marine Corps, in the military in general, the men and the women work together, and they wear the same uniform, and they train in the same area, and that a woman, she has a certain modesty that should not be, as in that she should be training and such with men. And so a woman Muslim Marine, though she would I've no doubt that she would be fierce in the military. She would also be it would be hard to practice her faith as a Muslim while also being a Marine.
So let me quickly interrupt you there. Jazakallah, thank you for that answer, but I think let's just go to a wide angle, first of all, and I'm going to ask some follow-up questions, and you can jump in. Are you equal in Islam? Do you have any rights? Are you oppressed? You know, I'm worried about that, because if I'm an average American, I'm thinking, you're just oppressed. You don't have any rights.
Assalamualaikum.
Okay,
so mostly Muslim women are dressed as ladies upstairs can look at me and they see us in hijab, and we go outside and we are covered. So the first question that lurks in people's mind is that this is an uneducated woman. So my experience is that once I went to my son's pediatrician, and I was in my hijab, and I partially covered my face also. My husband was also with me. So he looked at me, and he was filling out our forms. That was our, so he was filling the history, and he said, then he looked at me and he said, so what's your educational background? So I said, and I was like, educational background? Because mostly people ask, you know, what's your profession? What do you do? So I was like, so I was thinking, and he said, you know, I mean elementary, middle, and so I looked at my husband, and then I told my doctor that our pediatrician, I said this was our first encounter with him. So I told him that, you know, I'm a foreign medical graduate, I'm a doctor. So he was very, very embarrassed. And until this day, he calls me with my, you know, Dr. Asila and like that. But people look at Muslim women and the first thing they think they are oppressed, but Islam has given equal rights to Muslim women. There's nothing that a Muslim woman cannot do. Mostly you look at news from Saudi Arabia where the news comes that, oh, Muslim women cannot drive, they are so oppressed, they cannot go out. But that is Saudi Arabia. Like most of us learned driving who are from Pakistan. 16, 20 years ago we came and we learned driving back then. So, that is something not with Islam, that is something particular to Saudi Arabia. So Islam has given Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave equal rights to women. Women at the time of the advent of the Prophet Muhammad the baby girls were buried alive in a particular tribe in Arabia. And the Prophet Muhammad admonished that practice, and he said that whoever raises 2 or more daughters and gives them proper training and education is like will be like this with me in paradise, that he raised both of his fingers together, that he will be guaranteed my companionship. So he gave those rights to women, and then he made sure that women are educated. So he told his wife Aisha was one of the jurists of Muslim faith, and she used to teach both men and women, male and female companions of the Prophet Muhammad. So it's not that she was not educated, and she was among the most lettered women of those times. And then Prophet said that it is incumbent upon you to learn to get educated, even if you have to go to China. So he didn't say that, oh, you men you go to China for education. He said this was for both of them, because the more the woman is educated, the more she can take the.
Thank you for that answer. I think there is some follow-up question, please.
Could you please explain to me at least the reason why the women cannot be down here speaking to us about this rather than being upstairs speaking?
And I knew that was a question.
Yeah,
Yes.
you knew that was a question.
Yeah,
Okay, well, there it is.
I think this is unfair if I dodge that bullet and give that question to the ladies. I know they can answer. So you have to understand, we come from a different culture. Like every immigrant population that has come to US. We are the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, is a global community in 200 countries. Islam is a global faith. It's practiced with the culture of the country wherever it goes. Not only that, we are united at the hand of one leader, which we call Khalifa. And that's the problem with the Muslim world today, because people say, where's the Muslim Pope? Who speaks for him? Well, when you have a voice who speaks for you, when you have a leader, there is some responsibility, there's some limitations. At work, where is Lorraine, right? We work together. We can't wear anything we like. We have a CEO, we have a code of conduct. Today, our Khalifa, Mirza Masroor Ahmad, his wisdom says that we should observe this level of segregation, because we are a community which we're evolving. Islam allows us, that's why women go to work. That's why Muslim women fly F-16s. That is happening. But in our own settings, in our own mosques, our Khalifa today wants us to practice this segregation. Women are more than welcome to go and meet our ladies upstairs. But this is what happens when you're united at one hand. You have unification. Tomorrow, if our Khalifa believes that, we are mature enough as a community, yes, we will move and we will evolve. But I just wanted to make sure that we are an organized community. And by the way, it's not to say that we're very proud of it. We're very proud of our traditions. We believe, this is why we're very proud to be Americans, because we believe this is American individualism, isn't it? Where an individual can choose what they want. Where an individual has the right, we can still be American. Like there are many Jewish women, for that matter, right? We're aware of that. I've lived in New York. I've had Jewish friends. I don't look at that, look down upon those women. They're observing their culture, whatever they're comfortable with. So I know I've given you a long answer, but certain things that are cultural, they are gray, they require a gray answer. Right now, America is looking at everyone as their own prism. And anyone who does not fit that definition is not American enough. I'm not, saying this to you, but we face this all the time. It's almost like On one end, we are taught you can be whatever you want. You're an individual. On another end, we're given a definition that we must fit. We see a contradiction with that.
Can I just add to that? So I'm a Christian woman, and as you probably guessed, we're not going to agree on everything as far as religious beliefs go, and that's what this conversation is about. I disagree with the segregation of women, of men and women, but I will put my life on the line to defend your right to practice that religion in this country, in our country, and I would put my life on the line to defend the rights of the women upstairs who want to leave that or continue to practice that. So I think one of the concerns though is that that Americans are having is that they think that religious beliefs are going to then be imposed on them. And I think that's what we need to address, is that we, as Christians, as Jews, as Muslims, we're all going to practice our faith differently, and we have that right to free exercise of that faith. I think where there's a lot of fear is that Muslims will come and try to impose religious law on Americans, and I'm seeing that within my Christian community of Christians actually trying to do that and trying to impose religious law, Christian religious law on the country.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important segue again. There's a verse in Holy Quran, which is the highest evidence for any Muslim. Because all Muslims, no matter what color, shape, wherever they are, they would all agree to it, that the Quran is the word of God. So that's checkmate, right? I'm helping you. You make that argument to a Muslim. They don't have a comeback. There's a verse in Quran that says, there shall be no compulsion in faith. When Prophet Muhammad, and some people will say, well, that's just a verse, Islam is not practiced this way. Actually, it is. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he entered back into Mecca, pretty much as a de facto ruler. Some people say Islam is spread by sword. You can just Google it right now if you want. Just search victory of Mecca. That's the day when he comes back to a town that persecuted him, boycotted him, threatened his life. He had all the right, and actually, killed his family members. And when he comes back as a ruler with an army of 10,000 people, what does he do? He declares public amnesty. He does not impose faith on anyone. He does not force anyone to convert. And he does not even take revenge from someone. It was his right. So I think that's what we believe. Yes, are there any Muslim factions that come across as they want to push their agenda? Absolutely there are. We all ran from them. That's how we came to America, if you ask me. I didn't come here for a better living. My brother still makes a better living in Pakistan than me. He visited me and he had pity on me that, I have to drive my own car and wash my own clothes. We did not come here for the money. I tell you that up front. We came here, again, just like the original pilgrims came, fighting religious persecution. There are such Muslims. There's no question. They are. But we are united in that fight. And my request is, don't judge us from our worst examples, and don't judge yourself from your best intentions. Yes, sir.
My name is Muhammad. So it is not, I'm talking about the women in Islamic societies.
Yes, sir.
So it is not an issue of dress and how you should dress, or you should get a veil or you should not get a veil.
Get it closer so we can hear you.
So I'm saying it's not an issue of clothing. I mean, modesty, if somebody want to get a modest way, that is perfectly all right. I guess it's not any problem. I mean, the suspicion comes like that, that when women are sitting here participating in this conversation, and there is a question about women, and a woman answers from Muslim community from some undisclosed location, So, I mean, this is not a small thing. I mean, the problem is that why the Muslim women cannot be integrated in their own way, in modest way. So why they have to be locked up somewhere and speak from there?
I get your point, sir. Once again, that's why I humbly stated, aren't you now expecting us to fit into some definition which perhaps is your definition? Isn't that going to take away my American individualism? And if you start doing that, wouldn't that be a slippery slope? right tomorrow, and this is where it's gonna get really real now. There are people who will have objection, and I know some people, this is sensitive, but we open the conversation in families. By the way, does that go both ways? My feelings won't be hurt by anything I say, but can I have the same trust from you all as well? Right? So this is where our country is today. We're all expecting people to fit into our definition of modesty. For some people, having a child out of a wedlock is a big no-no, even your families. Isn't that true? What are you going to do about that? You're going to force them to fit into your definition? Abortion, are you going to force people to fit into that definition too? LGBT, are we going to force people? Interracial marriage up until 70 years, 60 years ago. All I'm saying is these are cultural things. We're deeply aware of it. We're deeply aware of it. But the women that you talk, I encourage you, they're not in an undisclosed location. There's an open door right there. You can, all ladies can walk up there. I encourage you actually, walk up there. And as far as men talking to women, that may be the next question. See, we see this as separation of church and state. We are in the house of Allah right now. We believe we need to follow the rule of Allah in His house. When we are at work, we're in America, we follow the American rule. We're not here to impose our will on you. Not at all. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for equal treatment.
No, I only want to react to one thing that my point was that he created some kind of misunderstanding.
I understand that, yeah. No, we fully understand.
So we as a Muslim should look at that issue, that how we can overcome this kind of situation.
So let me, before I go to Mansoor, I think once again, the ladies must be wondering if anybody wants to chime in. They're saying you're in some undisclosed location, locked up. I'm quoting here, right? Let me just hear from the ladies if anybody wants to jump in. Lorraine, let me go to you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just want to explain the segregation in a mosque from an Islamic component, and it's not to say that women are not equal to men. When we pray and when we're prostrating, we're at a vulnerable position. And for men to focus and women to focus on prayer, we feel that women and men need to be separated because we prostrate and we're going down in front of God. We want to focus on God. That's one of the reasons we do segregate. But there are plenty of times that we don't segregate. We, as Ahmadis, we have Lechna, which is our women's auxiliary, and we communicate with our men openly to arrange programs like this. Where I'm from the Pennsylvania Jamaat, I'm from the York Harrisburg Jamaat. We do lots of events where women are present in front of our guests to talk to the women. And we don't segregate on those kind of events. So it just depends on the organization and who's organizing those events.
Lorraine, your comment. I'm sorry, Mansoor, to keep you on hold. That's happened. Please.
Yes, I was just wondering how American women relate to you in that way, because I mean, American women are very strong and liberal and outspoken, and so they see that segregation as something, you know, as a kind of slap in the face to our society, you know. So do you have a hard time relating to American women because of that, and they don't understand that? And is that a problem for you? And how can that be, you know, more resolved for you so people can understand what's going on? I'm so glad you said that, because I wasn't understanding everything, and then when you explained it to me, I felt a relief, you know, like, oh, now I get this, okay? And I wish that, you know, every American woman could hear that, so they would understand that. And I was just wondering if it was a problem for you.
Not at all. Quick, short. Yes, please.
Really quickly. Women in this mosque are Americans too, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Everybody's American. So how do we reconcile in Jefferson's words? He said that it doesn't bother me whether my neighbor worships in one God or in 20 gods. because it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, that an American woman or a Spanish woman or any woman for that matter, or any individual, that's their individual right. When I was in New Jersey, first place I visited was the Amish county. I wanted to see, when you go there and you see these Amish who are not driving cars. Why do I want them to drive a car? They're happy with that first car. This is America. It's beautiful. Why should I feel threatened? So I think that's the argument we're making. We're not imposing our faith or culture on anyone. They're happy. You know, isn't that what America is all about? Mansoor, you've been on hold for a while.
Well, I mean, I sort of lost my train. There's so much that's happened now in between. I mean, I was just, I had various answers, like about, someone asked about, the women expression sort of, I'll paraphrase it. Maybe you should come to my house one of these days and you'll know how my wife expresses herself. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, this is all perspective. All of this is just perspective. And there was this, I don't know where I was at one point, they were talking about that, I think it's actually a religious thing, maybe I can be corrected, that sometimes your eye can fool you, and just by the way you're looking at it, the way your thoughts. I live in an Orthodox Jewish community where Amit is, and I see women who have they're sort of like actually like us actually. I mean, I remember one of the days someone called my wife into their home because they don't there's some electricity thing, and they asked her if they couldn't turn on the oven. So my wife literally went into their home and turned on their oven because they couldn't do it. Now, every organization, whatever organization, there's boys' schools, there's Catholic schools. I mean, if we start going down these routes, it becomes, there's a line somewhere. The bottom line is that Islam allows me to be a Muslim of my choice. And every woman that's sitting up there, she's not required to be here. She's here of her own choice. And if she chooses to put on a covering, because to be very honest, my wife, she feels naked if she doesn't have a loose garment. I haven't even had that conversation with her. I never had to. That's how she feels. But, and sometimes I throw out this weird question, maybe, let's see if it's a good analogy or not, test it right now. I ask people, I was like, can I get pregnant? And they look at me like they have this crazy look, on their face. No. My wife can get pregnant like him. We have to understand at some point that we are different. We can be equal, but we can be different. And my faith has certain teachings. I want to go by that law. Okay, that's important to me. I value that. And it's that simple. So do not feel for any second that there are bad situations in the world. I get it. Okay, I'm not denying that. But one of the ladies that just told you, she's a physician. Okay, she's very educated. She knows what she's doing, and she chooses to practice her faith freely. That's all we have to do. We just have to respect one another. That's it. Thank you.
I'm so glad you asked that question earlier on. Yes, please. Yes, you can please go. Oh, I'm sorry. So there's a question. Sorry. We'll take that first.
Hi, my name is Danielle. I just felt compelled to speak on behalf of the Muslim women that were here, and maybe not commingled here, but upstairs. As with any religion, I think that there's just there's a band of how close you keep that religion to you, and people keep it closer than other people. For example, myself, I'm a Muslim woman, and I'm sitting amongst everybody, and maybe like walking around here, nobody would be able to tell. I mean, other than I'm here right now, but like walking in the mall, nobody would really be able to tell that I'm Muslim based on the way I dress or the way I interact. And so, sorry for my shaky voice, I'm nervous. So I was just sort of, I guess, giving light to the different levels of respect people have for their religion and where they place that by their clothes or their prayer or whatnot. Wearing hijab, wearing burqa, there are certain pillars of Islam that one that is a Muslim follows, and people would argue that that isn't necessarily one, but it is along the line of Islamic followings and teachings. So, just so that everybody knows.
Thank you so much for that voice. And you choosing yourself does not make you any less of a woman or any more of a practicing Muslim. It's nobody's business to judge I'm so glad you stood up. Thank you. There's one question ahead of you, sir, and then I'll come to you. Okay, on this side.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I think this is a very, very important event that you guys are doing. My question is, one of the things that I heard all of you say was, we need to get back out to our communities and communicate and pass along the truth and overcome some of the falsehoods that are being perpetuated out there. So if I were to go back to my very conservative community back home, largely circled around a Catholic parish, which, you know, not to pivot too much away from the discussion, but they also don't allow women in the priesthood. So not every religion, you know, is going to jive with everybody's opinions. But if I were to go back to that community, what are, from each of you, one or two talking points that you could give me to better explain Islam, but coming from somebody who knows very little about the religion itself? So what are the one or two like main points that you think would be helpful for us to go out and reiterate to our communities back home?
I'll start, not being an expert on Islam, so then I'm going to defer to Mansoor and Fahim. I had a similar conversation. As you might guess, Wyoming is among the most conservative communities in the country. And I was home last year and visiting my mom, and one of the ladies she had over actually was one of my high school English teachers, who taught me To Kill a Mockingbird, that I think most of you are familiar with. You know, the story of Atticus Finch, that in allegorical terms has come to symbolize some universal truths. And so I was talking to this now 80-some-year-old woman that, again, was an English teacher of mine. And she asked what I was doing, and I mentioned I was working a lot on refugees and trying to push back against some of this anti-Muslim rhetoric and Islamophobia. And she said, wait a minute, but aren't those people trying to kill us? And this is the woman that taught me the tolerance of, you know, Harper Lee. And she spent her whole life in Wyoming. She had never met a Muslim, of course. I mean, it's very difficult to find a Muslim in Wyoming. And so I hearkened it back to that story and said, you know, I have a lot of Muslim friends because of what I did in the military and got to serve overseas in the Middle East. And so they're not a whole lot different from Tom Robinson as you approach that. And she, you know, scratched her head and I think was able to resonate with that. And so I would say, you know, meet them on their terms, find a way to relate to them in that way. Perhaps a personal story. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I told her that, you know, my best pal, my drinking buddy is Muhammad, because I work with him and I just love him, and he's Muslim and one of my dearest friends. And so, you know, she was able to speak to that. I think the other thing, and certainly Fahim or Mansoor can talk to it, but this notion that they want to impose Sharia law or honor killing or those other falsehoods of the faith, you can absolutely push back on, just like you can against other religions from the Crusades or otherwise, and say, no, that's not who they are. I know this, and you know, take them to task. I know we're in a place that oftentimes are not based on facts, but we do, in fact, you know, need to go back to facts oftentimes.
Your answer to, so my short answer is trueislam.com. We have a website. You can ask them to go to True Islam. There are 11 points which we believe are most contentious for an American today. Just go to trueislam.com. Actually, all of you can go there. We're looking for, if you agree with those 11 points, you can just endorse it. That's a simple way of doing your piece. But this whole Sharia law business, I think it's an insult to our founding fathers. Because people, doesn't that question come to your mind? Didn't Jefferson think about that? That, you know, one day somebody could come from outside. There's a supremacy clause in our Constitution, right? That's 8th grade civics. Like, I learned everything when I came here. Anyone here who can, so you cannot have a foreign law from anywhere in the country that will supersede the US law. So this whole debate is just chatting, so all political pandering. There's no such risk that our country is at.
I just want to add to that because I think since Sharia law has come up, I think people just get shook up from that word or something, like it's something dangerous. It's going to cut their heads off or something. You know, there's just a short answer that I think needs to be kind of given so everybody can be at ease. And I think some of my Jewish friends will probably be able to relate to it. You know, so Sharia law, does anyone know?
Go to the podium. In the last 3-4 minutes.
Does anyone know what it actually means? Does anyone know what Sharia law actually translates into? No, no, you can't Google it. Don't Google it. Don't look at it. Yes, yes, you know?
I think it means life bringing water.
There you go. That's pretty close.
Excellent.
See now, think about that for a second. A life-giving water. Life-giving water. It's sort of, you know, there's other questions, but in general, it's a path to life-giving water. It's a moral code for me to live by. It's not to be enforced on anyone. It tells me don't drink, don't gamble, don't commit fornication, adultery, pay your taxes, take care of your elders, look after the orphans, the poor. That's all Sharia law. We actually have forms of Sharia law in the United States right now as we speak. Have you ever heard of the death penalty? If someone murders someone and they get the death penalty, that's a form of Sharia law. You kill someone, you murder someone, we have something called the death penalty in the United States. Till this day. That's a form of Sharia law. So it's just, again, it's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of getting out there and asking questions. Have a conversation. If you don't know, you know, today you have this resource in front of you. Today you're going to meet people. Get their phone number. Say, can I call you up? Don't be scared. You know, I'm not going to call Fox News out, but Sharia law is coming to the United States. What does that mean? Anyway.
One last question, and then we have to land on time. One last question. Thank you so much for your patience. Sorry, sir. The lady behind you.
Oh, sorry.
Afan,
No, I'm good.
did you ask your question?
No, it's okay. Go ahead. You can go.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Please.
So just a quick question, since this is the week that it's been. I think we've talked about a lot of important things here, but one of the things I'd like to get everyone to say something about is some of you probably served in some of the countries that people can no longer come here from. So if you could talk about what that means to you, the people that you've been on the ground, who you worked with, that'd be fantastic, because I think a lot of these people would like a counter argument to the people that think that ban is a good idea.
Yeah, so I served in Iraq, and it is one of the countries that was on the list that the majority religion is banned from coming to the country, including the refugees, including the interpreters who served alongside us. And to me, I can't even believe that we're actually having this debate in the midst of wars that are going on when we have troops on the ground. And our interpreters who served alongside us, who served this country more than the man in the White House right now, more than anyone who is actually writing these laws and imposing them. These people are being banned from our country. It's wrong, it's immoral, it's inhumane, and it's beyond politics. And it's important that all citizens and all veterans start speaking out about this.
I mean, just adding to everyone's asked to comment on this. You know, it goes again back to that basic issue that we have, like painting everybody with a broad brush. Before it's Muslims, now it's 7 countries. That means there's a 3-year-old sitting in Iraq, okay, who's been a victim of this war, and now he can't get out of it, or she can't get out of it. How unfair is that? How unjust is that? Especially a war that we created. We went there and we did it. So I think if we can get away from this idea of painting everybody with a broad brush, and if anyone has gone through the immigrant process in the United States of America, which I believe many people have, it is already under the definition of extreme vetting. Okay, this other term, please don't fall trap to it. They're not out there to kill us, they just want a better life, get away from a war-torn country.
Thank you so much. Now, if you may allow me to land on time. What that means is, let's just take questions and we will answer later. Yes, please, make your comment.
The gentleman who spoke, my name is Joy Charles and I'm from St. Matthew's Catholic Church. And the gentleman who spoke about the Catholic our school, Cardinal Sheehan School, is getting together with the Muslim schools so that children are the innocent ones that can teach us adults about the religions. So we are getting together with the Muslim schools and the Catholic schools so that the children could learn about each other and take it to the parents.
Thank you. Very quickly, 30-second comments, sir.
That's 30 seconds. As a kid, I was scared of a monster underneath my bed. And quite a lot of kids were scared of the monster, let it be in their closet, let it be underneath the bed. Then my dad actually put me underneath the bed and said, stay there till you find the monster. And then I come and kill him. What I want all Americans to do, come meet a monster. I'm the Muslim. Face your fear. Instead of me coming out reaching you, if you are scared of me, come and meet me and ask me or tell me what is it about me that scared you. And this is what it is for all us Americans. I'm an airborne ranger, so I might bite you.
Thank you so much. Can we play that video, Alami? So I just wanted to make sure that ultimately this is all about making bridges. It's all about humanizing something which is very abstract. A few months ago, our Ahmadiyya Muslim community mosque in Connecticut was shot at by someone who happens to be a US Marine. Right? Now, you can judge all Marines by that. Let's just listen to this story. And here's my interesting point. I think if my guess is right,
families of the victims
most of you would not know this.
To somehow offer their forgiveness. Harry Smith has the story of the surprising awakening that came out of one shooting last year. Ted Hickey Jr. has admitted he had too much to drink that night. He'd been posting anti-Muslim messages on Facebook for months, and enraged by the scenes unfolding in France, he grabbed a gun, aimed next door, and pulled the trigger.
The bullet came straight through the prayer hall, through the internal dividing walls, and out through the women's side as well. So penetrated three walls.
The Marine veteran was arrested and pled guilty to a hate crime. Since something remarkable happened.
Would it be safe to say that you were guilty of stupidity?
Absolutely, of course. Of ignorance. Because if I had knocked on the door next door and realized that what they were all about, what even been a question.
After the shooting, Hickey requested to meet with the mosque's leaders. He asked them for their forgiveness.
It brought discredit upon myself, the Marine Corps, everything I stand for. This just isn't me.
And they did forgive him.
To my congregation, I'm going to ask you to greet and meet and hug Mr. Hickey and Mrs. Hickey, just like a Muslim should treat his or her neighbor.
The enemy next door became a friend. In fact, he became more than a friend.
First he was a shooter, and then he was our neighbor, and then he was a friend, and he became my brother when he prayed with me side by side and bowed his head in prayer, and he didn't have to do that.
A lot of the Muslims are very upset that their religion is being hijacked by people who don't follow the Quran. And that's what we need to realize, so that when you do see Muslims, you're not so, stepping away. You need to get educated, and the only way to beat this is with them on our side.
Friday morning, Ted Hickey Jr. was in court to learn what sentence he'd receive for his crime. Also at the courthouse, members of the mosque he shot at.
We were here to show our support and solidarity with Mr. Hickey, who's our new friend.
They were there because they believe Hickey does not deserve jail time.
This guy shot a gun at your congregation, at your house of worship.
But he was ignorant. But now that he knows, his heart has totally changed. And, it's one person at a time, as we call it. One drop in the ocean, but 150 million to go, so we'll keep going.
Neither Hickey nor his neighbors had made any effort to become acquainted. They were strangers, content to be apart, and that they acknowledged was a mistake.
Loving your neighbor is something that creates solace and tranquility in society and understanding. So you want to reach out to them to create that dialogue and to create that seed of love.
We teach our children that oftentimes the things they fear are simply unfamiliar. hatred for Muslims, or hatred for gays, or hatred for anyone who seems to be something other than ourselves is based in that kind of fear. A fear of convenience. Because sometimes it's just easier to hate than it is to find out who lives next door.
And Harry Smith.
Thank you so much. We can stop the video there.
Remarkable 180 turnaround for Ted
Now,
Haiti.
this is why you're all here today.
Question right to the
And we want to applaud the time that you took, your friends, your family. Someone said, true, you're preaching to the choir. But I have 3 quick recognitions. If you're a US veteran, Muslim, non-Muslim, if you're an American, don't believe in that kind of Sharia law of Taliban, please stand up. You want to recognize all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We value your service. If you're a guest here today, we had a small token of love and friendship for you. There is a cup that says, love for all, hatred for none. Please take a coffee mug before you leave. And how can we not honor our guests? Now, another thing, modesty goes both ways. You'll see Muslim men don't shake hands or hug with Muslim ladies. That's not because we don't respect you. That's an ultimate respect we give you. So, Sarah Feinberg, kindly, we would like to honor your service. Right? I was going to call you out, Scott Cooper. What more can we say? I just want to thank you. Yes, things may be difficult, but that's the history of every truth. If you go back and look at the life of Moses, peace be upon him, for our Jewish friends, life was not fun. If you go back and look at the life of Jesus, peace be upon him, he was persecuted and banned. If you go and look at the life of Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was persecuted and banned. In a very strange, crooked way, I feel blessed. I'm in good company. I'm in good company. At this stage, we will close. We're not worried about anything. I truly mean that. If you have absolute true faith in God Almighty, this is a very short, finite life. It ends. I'm a physician. I see it every day. What matters is, as we believe, is the hereafter. A hereafter which no faith monopolizes. Islam says heaven is not exclusive to Muslims. So, hope to see you there one day. I'm in no rush. I know you're not in no rush either. But now at the last point, it is customary for Muslims to close programs with a silent prayer. We will join in a silent prayer, but here is a quick demonstration. We don't want to impose it on anybody. You can pray in your own way. You don't want to pray in your own way, that's fine. You want to listen to Hamilton, that's okay. As long as you have your earphones on. So I just want to make sure that please don't feel compelled. But for all our Muslim friends and anybody who would like to join us, we now want to fulfill our promise, land on time. We have some refreshments for you. Please do not leave without that. And we will be here for as long as you want. We still, yes, the program ends, the questions and the dialogue continues. We will be here. Please go upstairs, meet our ladies if you have any questions. Join me in silent prayers. Ameen. Thank you so much. So now we will have refreshments.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, he's fine. He's upstairs, segregated. He's upstairs, segregated. improve something.
Yeah, yeah.
Love
now.
I'm fine. I didn't know you were in the military.
Stop broadcasting. Stop broadcasting. Stop broadcasting.